I'm not really someone who enjoys the outdoors, but my fiancé is a big fan of camping and traveling. Last summer, on my birthday, he surprised me with a camping trip he had organized in Arkansas. At first, I wasn't too thrilled about the idea, but he spent an entire hour convincing me, and eventually, I agreed to join him. We gathered our things and packed up the car, embarking on a 2-hour drive to the campsite. The sun was setting and our stomachs were grumbling, so we decided it was time for dinner. Setting up the grill, we began cooking meat and burgers. Amid the sizzling sounds, a sudden, loud scream pierced the air. Both of us exchanged worried glances and dashed towards the source of the cry. As we hurried past other campsites, we stumbled upon a man, clearly in distress. He seemed to be under the influence of alcohol and was standing amidst a pool of his own blood. It turned out that he had accidentally cut an artery while handling a knife, causing blood to gush out uncontrollably. Without hesitation, my fiancé sprang into action, helping the man to his feet and using his shirt as a makeshift bandage. In a rush, I headed back to our campsite to call for an ambulance, only to discover that there was no cell service. I repeatedly attempted to make the call, but my efforts were in vain. Despite my own aversion to blood, I summoned the courage to stay composed. Meanwhile, my fiancé supported the injured man as he was carefully led into our car. With me sitting up front, the strong scent of blood made me feel dizzy, so I focused on the urgency of the situation. Upon arriving at the hospital, the injured man was rushed to the emergency room and immediately prepped for surgery. Both my fiancé and I anxiously waited for any news. During this time, we managed to find the man's phone and attempted to contact someone from his contacts. To our surprise, nobody answered the calls. With no other option, we patiently awaited the outcome of the surgery. After a tense 5 hours, the doctors conveyed the good news that the operation had been successful and the man's condition had stabilized. Eager to express his gratitude, the man requested to meet us, his rescuers. Upon entering his hospital room, we found him fully awake, gazing up at the ceiling. We inquired about his background and his reasons for camping alone. He shared that he had always been comfortable with solo camping, but had encountered a terrifying experience this time around. While cooking near his camp, he had sensed an unsettling presence, but brushed it off, continuing to enjoy his meal and beer. Unexpectedly, a person emerged from the trees, attacking him with a sharp knife that caused him to collapse. The attacker made off with his wallet and valuable equipment, leaving him injured and shaken. A few days later, we learned from the news that multiple campers had fallen victim to a thief targeting campsites, stealing valuable belongings and money. My dad and I love camping every once in a while. After months of planning, we finally found the time to get together for this trip. Dad picked me up from my work, and we hit the road. As the sun began to set, we drove deep into the woods in search of the perfect campsite. After an hour of driving, we stumbled upon a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. It felt peaceful and secluded. Swiftly, we set up our tent and started a fire. As darkness settled in, we roasted marshmallows and chatted about our work and other things. Though I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, I didn't mention it. Out of the blue, a rustling sound grabbed our attention. Emerging from the shadows was a young boy, about 10 years old. His hair was messy and he wore ragged clothes. He seemed lost and frightened. Dad and I exchanged glances, then invited the boy to sit by the fire and asked if he needed help. The boy, Victor, had an odd mix of fear and excitement in his eyes. He shared that he lived nearby with his family in a big house deep in the woods. Something about him gave me an uneasy feeling, though I couldn't put my finger on it. He told us his family were hunters who survived by hunting animals. Dad raised an eyebrow, sensing that something was off, but we kept quiet. Suddenly, a group of people emerged from behind the trees, a woman, a man, and a little girl. They looked pale and malnourished. The mother called for Victor, and he introduced us to his family. The father invited us to their home and mentioned having special food for us. We hesitated, but they insisted persistently. Dad signaled for me to follow their lead, planning to leave after eating. Having a bad feeling about them, I secretly tucked my taser into my pocket and walked with the family. Dad asked about their location and work, but the man remained silent and gestured for us to follow. We reached a dense area in the woods and saw a cottage with an open door. The smell inside was revolting, like something was rotting. I asked about it, but the woman coldly shushed me with a finger to her lips. Victor lit a candle, and to my horror, there was a corpse sitting on a chair in the corner. Maggots and rats swarmed over it, and it seemed like chunks of meat had been torn away. My horrified gaze met Dad's, and we knew we had to escape. Panic-stricken, we dashed towards the door. The man caught Dad, but I managed to shock him with my taser, causing him to pass out. We fled and immediately called the police. Eventually, the family was apprehended. To this day, I shudder at the thought of what might have happened if we hadn't escaped. My friends and I decided to take a trip to a friend's farm. This farm had been abandoned for years. It was now only used by his family for barbecues and other hangouts. This was our first camping experience, and we were very excited about it. In total, there were 5 of us friends, and we reached the farm in 2 cars. Mike, the owner of the farm, had prepared a barbecue and other items, while the rest of us gathered the camping equipment. As the sun began to set, we set up our tents near the old weathered barn. The farm was secluded from the town, and not a single soul could be seen for miles around. We were getting an eerie vibe from it, but we laughed it off. After enjoying a hearty meal, we sat around a crackling campfire, engaging in conversations about our lives. Jake, who had a penchant for spooky things, started telling us some ghost stories. After a while, Mike and Jake decided to explore the old barn. Sarah and Emily stayed behind, chatting and stargazing, while I wandered around the farm, capturing memories with my Polaroid camera. The moon was high in the sky, casting a gentle glow over everything. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound coming from a distance. I looked towards the barn and saw a faint light flickering inside. My heart raced, but I brushed it off, assuming it was just my friends playing a prank. Sometime later, Mike and Jake came running out of the barn, their faces pale and their eyes wide with fear. They stumbled towards us, their words jumbled and panicked. They said they had seen something unsettling, but they couldn't quite explain it. The genuine terror in their expressions transformed our laughter into concerned murmurs. Without wasting any time, we decided to pack up and leave. We hurriedly dismantled the campsite, cramming our belongings into the car. As we were about to drive away, a strange thing happened. I was sitting in Sarah's car alongside Jake, while Mike and Emily were in the other car. We were driving side by side, but somehow, Sarah lost track of Mike's car. Despite knowing the way to the highway, every time we thought we had distanced ourselves from the campsite and were nearing the highway, we found ourselves back at square one, in front of the farm. Desperation gripped us as we attempted 3 different routes, only to end up back at the farm every time. Fear and confusion filled the air as we huddled together, uncertain of what to do next. Then, from the corners of our eyes, we spotted a figure standing near the barn. It was a person, or at least something that resembled a person, waving at us. Terror surged within us, and we called Mike to come to our rescue. He was puzzled when we told him about a person at the farm. Upon his return, we followed his car and finally managed to reach the highway. The events of that night continue to remain a mystery to us. Whenever we discuss it, Mike emphasizes that no one has ever seen anyone on that farm before or after our visit. It remains an enigma to this day.